Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Erin Zilka here with my business partner and wonderful friend, Liz Schneider. And today we have guest Leah Czerwonka. She is a business owner and restaurateur, and I have had the pleasure of dining at one of her current establishments, Father Fat's Public House in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And I can honestly share that it was one of the best restaurants I've ever been to. Such a wonderful atmosphere, great service, incredible food, and just a wonderful place to experience. So, Liz, thank you for helping to make this connection. I know you and Leah have known each other for quite some time now, and you were the one who invited her to join us here today. So, why don't you share a little bit about your history and how you guys have gotten to know each other over the years?
All right. Thanks, Erin. And thank you, Leah, for being here. It's been a long time coming. We've known each other roughly 20 years. And Leah is one of those people that helped inspire me to understand that I want to share other people's stories. And Leah has an incredible story, still needs to write that book on the story. So maybe this is the next step in doing that. But just a brief history as to why I am so passionate about having Leah here. Years ago, now it starts with my husband and I kind of being foodies in little small town Plover, which is a suburb of Stevens Point and planted right in the center of Wisconsin, and always looking to go on our next vacation to find the next food choice, and whether it's Chicago or Las Vegas or California, wherever the great hottest places were that we loved to go to, it was really all about the food. So we loved not only great food, but the experience that you get. You go into a restaurant and the first thing is what it looks like, what it smells like, what the vibe is. We all know that. I mean, it kind of the Starbucks experience. I loved Starbucks in the earlier years, I would say more, where they really remembered my name when I came in and or drove through and they're like, "Hey, are you going to have your usual?" That type of. So that's mine and my husband's history of food, and literally there was nothing in Plover. You had to drive a whole 15 minutes to get to anywhere halfway decent in this town to get some good food. Well, newspaper, back in the day, it was the newspaper that all of a sudden a big time restaurant is coming to Plover. And we were shocked and what? This is so cool. We were so excited. And honestly, in a way, thinking, "Oh, okay, they're probably touting it a little more than what it should be for being in Clover." And honestly, from day one, it never disappointed. And to this day, it's just been one of the best places. And there's a history. It's not just one restaurant. Leah has a history of opening up restaurants and, creating a new and interesting environment wherever she goes, wherever she puts her mind to work. And so we would go in, we took our daughters. Interestingly, very quickly, we realized that our older daughters were in daycare together. So it soon became an environment for us, like walking into the Cheers set where everybody says, "Norm," they would be like, "Hey, the Schneiders are here." And we were always treated like family. I mean, it was just such a great environment. And again, the service, the food, a high-end restaurant, and yet they made the world's greatest mac and cheese for our kids. So, which most adults like too, to be fair, to this day.
Pretty good mac and cheese.
Yeah. So, Lee and I, it was kind of a natural thing that we, "Hey, you want to have coffee?" And so we've begun this relationship where not a lot, but occasionally, never enough, right? We get together and have coffee and talk for a couple hours and shoot the shit and tell you, what's going on with our lives and talk about everything. And so we've grown to be good friends, but honestly, in my world, one of the people I respect the most as to being a female business owner, a spouse and of a business owner, that has to make that work, and a mom of kids that are really growing into wonderful ladies, and yet somehow, I say I used a couple of words I jotted down. I consider Leah a survivor and a winner.
Mm.
And, but is it without a struggle? Hell no. You know? So with that, I think it would be good to share Leah's story in her words. So Leah, thank you again for being here and being willing to talk about this stuff. So
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm over here blushing because normally my husband is the one in the front of the camera, not me. I'm very comfortable in the behind the scenes, so that gets to be a little bit interesting. I think that so thank you for saying such nice things. So my name is Leah. I am from Stevens Point. I'm a Stevens Point native, graduated from Stevens Point High School. And I'm trying to figure out where to start because you had so many great things to figure out there. Like, how did we end up in Plover? How
well,
did
I
we
I really
how
I think that beginning, like my opening scene is you driving out to California.
That's kind of what I picture too, just from what little I know and have heard.
Yeah. And
Venturing out on your own and just trying
yeah,
to
like
win.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was a pretty miserable 20-year-old, right? Like I was just so unhappy. And I had worked for Jim Gitter in high school, and he had Emerald's one and only cookbook. And so I knew of him. This was pre Food Network TV. This was pre any of Emerald's shows, at least on a national level. I think he had a smaller show, kind of local, in the South. And then I knew that he was opening up another restaurant in New Orleans. And people dream about weddings. I dream about cities. I had always wanted to live in New Orleans. I think that I still love it to this day. It's one of those cities that is just amazing to me. So my plan was to make myself happy was to get in my car and drive to New Orleans and knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm here to get a job." And that didn't work out exactly that way. I got in my car, I drove and got lost several times, and strangely enough, when I figured out where I was more in my very naive 20-year-old mind, more west than south. So I continued on and said, "Well, I'll go to California. I've never been there. What do I care? I just don't wanna live in Stevens Point anymore." And that was my only goal. And so all of us now have at our age have traveled a lot, but at that time I had never been there and I'd never seen that much traffic in my life. I'm in a geo metro. It is full of everything I own, my clothing, my alarm clock, my coffee pot, which is the only things that really matter to me, and my futon mattress because I figured worst case scenario, I could just throw that down on the floor. But I couldn't see out the rear view. I only had the side view mirrors. It's this little car that I swear was going to fall apart any minute. No money, no credit card, no cell phone because those things didn't exist. And I called every night. I would call collect to my second parents because they knew where I was and what was happening just to check in and say, "Hey, this is where I'm at." Took me about 3 days to drive across country, and I pull into, you know, the outskirts of LA, and holy moly, it's like 6 lanes of traffic merging with 6 lanes of traffic, and everyone's driving 110 miles an hour, and I have no idea where I'm going. There is no MapQuest. You need a paper map, and you can't drive and read a paper map. So my infinite wisdom decided to just stay in the lane that I was in, and wherever that landed is where I was going to be. Now I'm very lucky that my car didn't break down and I ended up, a Dateline episode on the way there. I'm lucky that I didn't end up in East LA or, Compton or some neighborhood that I shouldn't have been in. The lane I was in happened to end in Santa Monica, and I'm looking at the ocean, turned left, I got a hotel room. Spent a couple of days in that area, applied with employment agencies, applied with a nanny service, like, trying to get a job. I did a couple of interviews. I was looking for a roommate situation because I knew I couldn't afford rent, and nobody would hire me because I didn't have any address, and I didn't have any the one nanny position that I almost got said, "Well, how do we know you're not gonna just pack up and leave again?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know I don't know. I probably won't, but I don't know for sure." So that's what I did, and I was there for, 3 days, 4 days trying to figure that out, and decided I had to go home because I had enough money to get home and gas, and I knew that I'd have to come back. I was crying because 'cause I'd have to live with my mother, whom I love, but did not wanna live with anymore, and so I'm driving back and I see this sign for Las Vegas. So I follow the sign to Vegas and I figured, well, I'm going to do something on this trip. I'm not just going to waste it by driving and doing nothing else. So I pulled into Las Vegas on the corner of I-15 and Tropicana. There's a gas station still there, was just there a couple of years ago, it's still there underneath the freeway. And I got a cup of coffee and a paper and I called. There were 4 ads for roommates. I called all 4. One guy answered. I went out and met him and I had moved in by 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Wrote him a check. Never met him. I didn't know who he was, didn't even know what neighborhood I was in, but I wrote him a check and I figured I had 30 days to figure things out. So that was a Friday and on I called my second parents and said, "Can you put some money in my checking account because the check I just wrote this person is going to bounce and then I don't have 30 days. I'm just looking for 30 days." And so I didn't do anything on Saturday. On Sunday, because this was again back in the day with newspapers, and the only way to find a job then was in the newspaper. So I pick up the Sunday Las Vegas Journal and there's a ton of ads for restaurants. And there's this big ad for Emerald's New Orleans Fish House at the MGM Grand, which I had no idea was happening. So I don't know how I would know, but I didn't know at the time. I knew that he was opening a second restaurant in New Orleans. I was not aware of this one in Vegas.
Mhm.
So I went Monday morning and applied, and I walked in, and there were, without exaggeration, 4 or 5,000 people
Oh my god.
milling around this building applying for jobs. Now, it was a kind of a job fair. What I learned after was that the MGM had just laid off all of their own internal food and beverage people and were leasing their outlets now to independent restaurateurs, Emerald being one of them.
Mm.
And so all of those people have gotten laid off and displaced, and they're looking for jobs. And they're I walk in and I said I wanted to apply to be a server, and she's like, "We have 3,000 applicants for server. Can you do something else?" And I said, "Sure, I can bartend." So she's like, "Great, fill an application for that." So I fill it out, I turn it in. She says, "Do you want to wait for an interview?" I'm like, "I would love to wait for an interview." So I'm in this room waiting for 3 hours, I bet. And they're all talking about knowing each other and how they get preferential consideration because they were laid off MGM employees, and about the TAM cards and sheriff cards and all these things that you need to work in the city of Las Vegas because of gaming. And I just felt smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller by the minute because I'm completely lost. And so I get into the first interview, and
And
that
yet
was
you
with
waited. You waited
I
that 3 hours.
I did. I was not leaving. I needed a job, and I
So
wanted to work
you
with
have
Emerald.
yeah, and you have something in you that is like,
Well, yeah, well, I
"Let
mean,
it
I get a
out."
little angry.
Yeah. I
Anger,
could feel it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember walking into the interview with Scott Farber, who was at the time the West Coast Director of Operations for Emerald, and my first question was very nicely, I said, "Look, I don't wanna waste my time. I really want a job with Emerald, I really need a job, but I'm not a laid off MGM employee. I don't have preferential treatment, I'm from out of town, I don't know what any of these things are. I don't have a TAM card or a sheriff's card." And he looked at me and he said, "We're new in town and don't have no idea what any of those things are either." And I interviewed. So he asked me one of the questions he asked was, "What was your favorite dish at your last restaurant?" And I told him chicken chapatulas from the Silver Coach. And he said, when I worked for Gitter, you had to verbalize all the specials. And so we knew these things, like heart, still know it. And he asked me if I could spell chapatulas. So I did. And
My
I
god.
spelled it correctly. And he laughed at me. He said, "Do you know that Emerald's flagship restaurant is on Chapatula Street in New Orleans?" And I said, "I did not know that." So we talked about food and service and all of those things. And he said, "Do you want to wait around for a second interview?" And I said, "I sure do." And so we waited another hour and a half about, and I got an interview with Eric Lindquist, who was Emerald's CEO at the time. And he said, his first question to me was, "So you want to bartend? What do you like about it?" And I said, "Well, I like that there's always things to do. It's busy. You have customer interaction, but you aren't trapped, kind of, you know what I mean? Because there's always something to do, and customers understand that part of it. And I like the busy work, something along those lines." And he said, "Do you know how to make a Sazerac?" And I said, I have no idea. I've never heard of it, but I do know how to read and I have books on bartending." And he's like, "Oh, you're a smart ass." And I said, "Yes, I am." And I was hired before I left, and I started a week later.
Oh my gosh. That is incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, so I went into the training and then I was hired as a bartender with a bunch of other people, and we opened the restaurant a few weeks later. It was just meant to be, is how I always think about these
Yeah.
things.
100%. And you didn't stay as a bartender. How did
I did
you
not.
end up in
So,
Emerald?
yeah, so I get bored very easily, which is why I loved what I did for a long time with Emerald. They would sit as a team. This was at a time when Emerald's company was growing really, really fast. So he had Emerald's and New Orleans, he had NOLA in New Orleans, he had Emerald's New Orleans Fish House, and they were talking about from the very beginning, they were talking about Delmonico in New Orleans, and then Orlando and Miami and back to Las Vegas and all these restaurants. And whenever they would have dinner late into the evening and somebody needed to be there to bartend, and I was always like, I don't have anything else to do. So I got a lot of, you're when you're serving drinks, you hear a lot of things. And I just said, I want to go to the next restaurant. I want to go open the next restaurant for Emerald. And they were like, oh, great. Cause we learned a lot from them. And the one thing I loved about that company was they were at the time very willing to teach you how to do everything. Never show you the bottom line, but it was, this is how you manage your liquor costs, this is how you manage your labor, this is how you manage your food. And there was a lot of open communication about how to do those things. And if you were willing to do the work, they were willing to teach you. And so that was, I mean, I can't even quantify how much I learned in that time that I was there. So I put my hat in the ring. I'm like, I want to go to Delmonico. I just want to go. I want to open it. That's what I want to do. And so there were like 4 or 5 of us that moved from Las Vegas down to New Orleans, and we're getting ready to open up Delmonico, which it's closed now, but it was on St. Charles. And the construction was really delayed because it's a super old building. It was 100+ years old. And so we were delayed and delayed. And so what they had us do was come in, and we wrote the first training manual for servers and bartenders and staff. And as a team, we've sat down and did all of those things, and what's the best way to do this? What's the best way to do that? And then I worked with, his name was Nick, on programming the computer system on how to order drinks the best way so that we get information and it speeds things up. And they were just doing a lot of programming, but computer programmers don't know how to make drinks. So you have to get them to understand, well, I need this. And so Nick and I worked together a lot on those kind of things. And then we opened up Delmonico, and I was in New Orleans for about 4 years. And then I went to Orlando and did it again because I was sitting there late at night bartending and saying, I want to go to Orlando. And then but I want to go to Orlando, but after Orlando, I want to go back to Vegas because I don't wanna stay in Orlando. I wanted to, do the next one. So I did that for quite a few years and opened up 9 properties for him, and my husband met him when I moved back to Las Vegas. So it was it was it was so much fun. It was phenomenal.
So you
It was a great
Christian
education.
you met Christian in Vegas then?
We met in Vegas. Yeah.
Good
So
stuff.
again, things are meant to be the way they're meant to be, right? So
Mhm.
if I had not gotten lost and landed in California, I would have landed in New Orleans, and I would have worked at NOLA, which is where my husband worked at the time. And we would never be together because he was always very focused on what he wanted and I was still really wild. So we were not going to connect at that point. And so we didn't meet then. And then when I was in Orlando, I was in Orlando for 9 months, and I only took like one weekend off. And the weekend that I took off was the weekend that he came in and staged with the chef de cuisine there because he was going out to Vegas to be the chef there. And so we missed each other twice, and then we missed each other again in Las Vegas and then came back together. So when we finally met, I was calmer. I had sown enough oats, and he was divorced, and so we were. And we've been together we just celebrated our 24th anniversary, 23rd anniversary,
Congratulations.
something like that.
That's
I
incredible.
can't yeah, been a long time. That's horrible. I don't remember the years.
Okay. Just a lot of them.
A lot in the best possible way. Feels like 20 minutes still, right?
Right, right.
So, but again, if we had met in New Orleans, there's no way we'd be together. No, none
That's
whatsoever.
really cool though how your paths have crossed. Like you've had all this like intertwining of history, but
Mhm.
now it's such a great story to be able to tell.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. I absolutely believe things happen when they are meant to happen. Timing is everything. And I think that just hearing your story, it sounds like you definitely follow that belief. And there's a lot of that in there where you're just kind of following your heart and you're following your passion, and something is driving you along the way. And I know you mentioned anger is a good driver for success for sure. But
Leave
with
that.
everything that you're doing, you have so much heart, but you're still very dedicated and focused. And do you feel like there's like one specific mission or one specific purpose that as you're going through and making these decisions that is kind of like your guiding light, or something that you feel is true to you that you always kind of come back to? Because that's a lot of big changes and
Yeah,
just
a lot, yeah, and I'm that's kind of been my whole life. It's always been a lot of change. I like that part of it, but I think that somebody asked me one time, "How did I know that the bistro would succeed?" And I said it never occurred to me that it wouldn't.
wow.
And I'm not exaggerating. It just never occurred to me that it wouldn't. And so it if I had thought about that in that way, I think then you're almost looking for failure, right?
Yeah.
Right.
We knew it was gonna be hard. We knew we were gonna be poor. We knew we were gonna be broke for quite a few years. But, I learned a lot along the way. I think in general, my guiding philosophy is always that whatever you want or need, if you put it out into the universe, it will bring it back to you. So if you talk about wanting to open a restaurant or talk about wanting to start a podcast or talk about wanting to start a business of any sort, then that's those opportunities start to come to you from the universe, right? So it's an to me, that's kind of an energy and it's always worked for me. If I want it and just it's not like it's almost manifestation and bring it into fruition, but I don't know if it's that specific for me. It's really more just like when you there have been times when we need, $10,000 to cover payroll. And I'm like, "Ooh, that's not gonna happen." And then we'll get something in the mail or a party will book or we'll have a great weekend or like you just put it out there and you're like, "Okay, this is where I'm at." So I think that would be mostly I also think change is necessary. I don't like to feel stagnated. I don't like to feel like I'm in the same place for too long. And that could be counteracted by as much as simple as changing the drink menu. Just I hate seeing the same thing over and over and over and over. My husband and I are the same way. So
Mhm.
I would open restaurants every year, except for they cost a lot of money. And we've gotten old enough where we need to focus on retirement, not building. So, and you can't keep taking on debt at that level if you're going to ever retire. So, that's part of how Christian's Chef's Kitchen evolved into what it is today. It's because we get to do different things without having to build a new restaurant every time because it keeps us
Okay.
interested and engaged.
So you made a great segue.
Yeah.
Um, and I could stay on the backstory for a while, but you have, as far as I can count, I think 5 specific different restaurants that you've gotten yourself into. Is that correct? With the food truck.
We have
Explain how that evolved
Sure.
and
So we opened up Christian's Bistro and it was funny I feel like I can say this. I'm not going to name anything specific, but when we moved to town, so let me just back up a moment. We were living in Atlanta. So we had left my husband and I got married in Vegas, worked together. Once you're married, you can't both work in the same restaurant and I didn't want to work at the other restaurant in town. So and then this opportunity for him to go to Atlanta as the chef de cuisine came up, and I'm like, "Well, yeah, let's take it," because we could live in Marietta, which was a smaller town feel, but you're still next to the big city, and there wasn't a day of the 2 years we lived or yeah, 2 years that we lived in 3 years that we lived in Atlanta that I liked. I did not like Atlanta. And so
Easier to
he
move
had
on
to
to the
drive.
next place.
Yeah, whoo, like, let's go. Way too big, yeah, way too big. Anyway, so I was pregnant with our youngest, and we had been looking for commercial property and trying to figure out how to do our own space. And my mom lived in Atlanta. She sold her home here in Stevens Point and moved to Marietta where we were because we had the only grandchildren. And her and my oldest were very close. And I was in the hospital with pneumonia with Ella when I was 6.5 months pregnant. And my mom picked me up when I was released because my husband worked 100-hour weeks. And she said, we went to lunch and she said, "I'm going to move home." And I'm like, "Not without me, you're not, because we can't do this without you. Like, there's just no way." And so Christian came home from work and we talked about it. And I said, why don't you just go to Point? He had been here, obviously. I said, why don't you just go to Point and look and see? Just look at it from a business standpoint. And I can't fly, so just go and see what's happening. And he came out here. He was here for 2 weeks with the same second parents that I have, and they looked in Madison, Wapaka, Wausau, Stevens Point, Plover, and he liked the developer that we had at the bistro. And he came back, he tried to explain it to me. I'm like, "That's Rainbow Falls. That's not it doesn't what you're talking about doesn't exist. Are you sure you don't mean in the business park, like by the Walmart?" He's like, "No, I know what I'm talking," and I never believed him until we got here. So anyway, we
Just as a
decided that
side
that's
note just as a side note, Erin, Rainbow Falls is where their original building was,
Okay.
and it was years ago, it was an amusement park with
Mhm.
a water park.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's great.
Oh, see, I didn't know you didn't know that. Yeah.
that was Rainbow Falls. Yes, so I'm sure some of the viewers will find that interesting and
Yeah. I was like, "Rainbow Falls? What?" Anyway. So we decided that that's what we wanted to do, and we had Emerald on a Friday. I came home on Sunday. We listed the house on Monday, it sold on Wednesday. We packed up our stuff in 10 days and moved it to Stevens Point, and my sisters unpacked it and put it into storage. It
Wow.
was, again, meant to be, right? So you just when things work out that way, they work out that way, and so then we moved in with my mom, we packed up her house, and then we all were here by June. So we started looking for we got our SBA approved. We had been working with a business planner, a gentleman to help us write our business plan, and we had SBA approved. We had everything in place, and we got turned down by the bank that we were working with. Their they had lost a lot of money in a restaurant gig the night, 2 years before, and the board decided not to approve us, even with the SBA already approved. And so we have to start over basically at this point. And there were many banks in town that wouldn't even take my call. We don't finance restaurants. And then one said, "Well, you can't make a restaurant work here without a salad bar and a fish fry. Why don't you open a supper club?" And I'm like, Don't we have enough of those? Like, can't we do something else? Like, this is the concept that we're going with, and we believe in it." And
Yeah.
so we were talking at home about, okay, well, what's the plan? Because we don't have any money left. We're out of money, and we're gonna have to stay with family. We're gonna have to find a job out of the city. We're gonna have to move again. Like, there's just where are you gonna work here in Stevens? Where are either one of us gonna work here in Point? And so our last bank was Wood Trust, and Bill Fields is a foodie, and he got it right away. And he said, "Let's do it." And I was like, "You got to be kidding me."
Mhm.
I'm
Incredible.
like, "Okay, cool." So we finally so that's how we ended up at the bistro and got financed. And we were there for we signed an initial 10-year lease and a 2-year extension, and then closed just due to lease negotiations. But and now I've forgotten where the actual question was, Liz. I apologize.
Okay, so it was the transition from
Yeah,
And
there we
restaurant,
are. I
I
remember.
restaurant to restaurant.
yeah.
So we had been in the bistro for about 4 years, and we had, one of our first few date nights out without the children and without work. So one of our guiding principles with the kids and the whole precipice of wanting to do our own restaurant was to create our own hours. It is really hard to have children in the restaurant business. You are at work at night, you are at work early, especially if you own it, but it's just a different lifestyle, and it's really hard to have kids in that, and that was our goal. And so one of the things that we promised each other is that one of us would be home every night to put the kids to bed. And so we took turns based on who had the most trained staff, right? So if his kitchen staff was super strong, I would stay and close and he would go home with the kids. If the front of the house staff was really strong and he needed to focus on some of the things that were happening in the kitchen, I would go home with the kids. And we had nannies, and my family was incredibly helpful. I can't even imagine how we did it without them. But we had a date night. And when we started dating, we liked to go to several different restaurants and have an appetizer and a drink. And that was kind of our date night out. We wanna try a bunch of things. My husband will go to a restaurant and order every dish on the menu without I'm not exaggerating. He will order everything on the menu because he wants to try it. So we were talking, we went to dinner. I can't even remember where we went. And then we were like, "Well, what are we gonna do?" it'd be nice to have some place to go have a cocktail, but I don't want to go to a bar, right? We're too old for bars. I don't want to sit in a bar. And boy, it'd be nice if we could just have like a late night snack and a cocktail. And that's the idea for Father Fat started to form. And this idea of small plates and sharing. And so we start talking about it and sharing the idea with people and talking about it with each other. And we start to plan and how would it work? How would we organize it? All that kind of stuff. And then we were approached by Tom Wolf, who owned Cafe 27 at the time. And they were interested in potentially them keeping the daytime and then partnering with us, and we would run the space at night as a restaurant. And it didn't work out for a multitude of reasons. But then when they decided to close Cafe 27, they came and asked us if we wanted to buy Fats and we or buy their building, and we said yes. So 5 years into the bistro, we opened up Father Fats. And so similar food, but completely different styles as far as service and plating and portion size. Like the idea at Father Fats is to put 3 or 4 plates together to make your meal versus, and some of those plates are for 2 people or 3 people, and some are for one. And so just you build it up that way versus having everything on your plate. That's all you get to try. Right. So that's how that idea was born out by far. And then so then we were at Fats for about 3 years, 4 years before I met Peter, who owns the building that Chef's Kitchen is in, and we had been internally talking about how there's no good taquerias in town. There's California Mexican, there's American Mexican, but there's no, like, we love this taqueria in New Orleans. We go every time we go there. And so that was kind of the idea of what we wanted to do, and that space became available, and there we were. We opened that up, 3 years after, 4 years after, in November, 4 years after Father Fats opened. And then
Which was
David
El
correct, I'm sorry, we called it, yes, it was El Jefe's Tacos and Tequila, and it was focused on traditional Mexican food. So, loved it, we loved it. It was that for 3 years, and COVID hit. 4 years, COVID hit, but I have to go back up for just a moment. David, we were having drinks one night, margaritas. All my best ideas come during margaritas.
with margarita.
Um,
Love it. It's great brain fuel.
we're drinking margaritas. I'm like, we have good ideas. The next morning we're like, oh, but would they work out? So David had seen this Facebook post about the Tortuga. I don't know if you guys remember Tortuga food truck for sale. And he's like, we should buy that. And I'm like, there's no way the bank is going to give us money we just opened up a restaurant. We have, this one's paid for, but we owe on this one and this one. There's no way they're going to give us money to buy. And we don't have cash to buy that thing. And so I went to see Butch, who's now we're with International Bank of Amherst. And he's like, we should totally do that. I'm like, damn it.
Oh, okay.
Damn it. Because I went thinking I'm just gonna appease them. He's not gonna give it to us. I don't wanna run a food truck. What are we gonna This is crazy. And you can edit this out if you want, but they wanted, in our tequila-driven night, they wanted to do everything on the food truck in the shape of balls. So, like, risotto balls, crab balls, and then the tagline would be, "Put chef's balls in your mouth."
I love it.
I'm like, "No." And so then later I find out that
Like
they
a
really
hot
wanted
dog somewhere.
Yes. Later I find out that they really wanted to call it the Munchie Mobile, but I had already struck that down because I'm like, No, it's just too, it's too political."
Yeah.
The Munchie.
Controversial, what
I'm
you're
like,
encouraging. Yeah.
We're not, what are we saying here?" So so they won because they wanted to name it with the tagline, "Put chef's balls in your mouth." So I was just like, okay, well, you win. So we opened the food truck, and we had that for 8 seasons and just sold it last year. So is that 5? I think so.
And this
Yeah.
is where I can vouch for, and I actually want to maybe move to the how you find how you create the amazing culture that you create. Because my younger daughter, who's now almost 18, started working for them when she was 14. She loved food and she wanted to do something, and Leah gave her the opportunity, her 14th summer break, and one of her bigger areas of working in was the food truck. But I am not kidding you. I mean, from day one, it was she would come home and talk about how good she was treated. and just nonstop. I mean, and she was a dishwasher. She still does, that, and she still when it's not the school year mostly. The dishwashing, the back of the house stuff, she's a little bit more interested in, but there's nothing that she's ever come home and said, "I hate the people I work with," or "I hate the environment that I work with." So, this is okay. Like, let's do a little lesson here because being a foodie and I love a good atmosphere, but nothing ruins it like going in and getting a terrible wait person that doesn't care. Or, maybe on the other end too, if I was in food service once, so I know usually the difference between the server's problem and the kitchen's
Mhm.
problem.
Yeah.
So to have either of those issues just ruins the experience. So how have you maintained this? Because I mean, I am not kidding. I mean, obviously there's people, but we all deal with those. But, by far you have such a stellar reputation, and I've witnessed it and all my friends have witnessed it. I love bringing people from out of town there. What's your trick? What's your secret?
I have the
Is it
pressure.
the anger?
Yeah, the anger.
Right
Yeah,
here,
it's the exact
nodding to everyone.
yeah, it's the exact opposite. I think well, thank you for saying that. I know how many issues we have on a daily basis. And it's funny because we're just coming out of a really big transition where we went from this core staff of, 20 and we added 10 people. And adding those people in changes how things operate and it's important to maintain the culture and make sure that they're doing things the way that you want them to do, not their old habit. There's so many things that come into play. And there's definitely some hiccups that we've had over this transition with service and with timing of food and how long things take. And, the only way to learn how to cook is to cook. And so we're training on the job. And every kid in the kitchen that we hired came from either Fox Valley Tech or another restaurant. And they are inexperienced and it takes time. So, and if they cook it wrong, we're not sending it out. So then we have to start over. Right. So we don't want anything to leave the kitchen that we aren't proud of, and if it's messed up, and we have to start over, and that takes time. And
How do you
they have to learn how to manage 6 burners at one time. That takes time as well.
So what is I'm assuming you know a little bit of the behind the scenes. So somebody comes in and you're, packed and somebody new it makes a disaster. So you have to start over. How do you like what are you saying to them to keep their
Yes.
spirits up while also realizing no, it cannot go out now.
Yeah.
And that the server, you're dealing with the server who's impatient too.
Correct, and the servers really that we train the servers to be the last line of defense, right? So how we run our operation is there's a line, right? There's a cold line and there's a hot line, and all the food comes out of there. So there's maximum 3 people behind the line at Father Fats, and we can do upwards of 140 people in a night, and that is 2 people or 3 people cooking all that food. And on the flip side of that is the chef, either expo or so Haley or chef or someone else, myself, sometimes expoing and they're controlling what the cooks are cooking, right? And then tracking how it goes out. But the person on expo can't catch everything. So we train the servers that they're the last line of defense. And if they won't put a plate down, if they're not proud of a plate that they put down, don't take it out. Don't take it out. The other thing that we do quite a bit is our menu changes so often, and the vision of chef of Christian or Haley may not come through to me, and we misprice something based on poor information, or we disagree on portion size, or those kind of things. And if if they're not proud to defend the price of that plate, then tell me, because we'll adjust it and take what you're saying into consideration. And if I were to go back to your original question, I think number one, I try to always treat people the way that I want to be treated. And I don't ever want to be talked down to or talked at. I also, Chef and I are both really, really good at not micromanaging people. I don't enjoy that aspect of managing people at all. I believe in giving them autonomy to make decisions. They have to make decisions in the moment, right? This is a fast-paced environment and things come up and they have to make a decision. So whenever I hire somebody and they're trained in, it's like, look, you have to make the decision to make something right for a customer, right? So the first person that you should be considering is the customer being taken care of. The second thing that you should consider is the business being taken care of. And the third thing you should consider is how you play into that. How does that affect you? That decision affect you, right? So if the dish is wrong, take it off. That's okay. I'm not mad about that. But if the dish is not liked, then that's different than being wrong, right? That's just somebody's taste preference. And we're really sorry that you didn't like that. You still ate it. So there's to find that balance. And I never questioned an employee's decision in the moment because that so this is I'm talking about front of the house at this point in time. So I don't ever want to question their decision in the moment because it's not fair. I don't have the same information that they had, or I would have made the decision. I wasn't in that set of circumstances, or I would have made the decision. But if I dislike what they did, we talk about it the next day. And we just go through like, okay, this is what I would prefer you do. For example, they wanted to buy another business who was in for dinner drinks. Great, buy them drinks. But instead of that, they over poured their drinks and then they went out. And so the table, so they were thinking they're taking care of our counterparts, right, in town. And that's awesome. I want them to do that. But the customer next to them has no idea why they got this full glass of wine and their glass of wine is
Yeah.
5 ounces, right? So, I mean, 5 ounces versus 7 ounces is big difference in a glass of wine, and you have to pay attention to those things. Now, they don't have enough experience usually, and I wasn't mad about it at all. I explained why, and they were like, "Oh, that makes so much sense." And you just have to think about perception. Nobody knows that you're an employee when you come in. Why is everybody stopping at your table to talk to you? Stop interrupting everyone else's dinner. If an employee is in, say hi and walk away, right? It's just about that kind of perception. As far as line cooks, how do you keep their morale up? I think it's teaching. I think that it's not a you effed up and throw the plate. It's like, hey, this is not right. And here's why. And here's how we're going to do it this time. Right. So their pan wasn't hot enough or it was too hot. They didn't pre-season the meat, so then it doesn't have any flavor. And you just can go through those things almost instantly. You can kind of see what went wrong if you have enough experience with food. Like I can see something's wrong from the plate. If I have a new fry cook who didn't this happened recently, he wasn't doing the proper technique to fry the calamari. So the calamari is coming out underdone and too pale and it was all in one clump. I'm like, dude, you have to dude, I said that. So I'm like, chef had to go through and you have to put it in this and then shake it out in the pan and then put it in the fryer. And so there's a technique to everything and they don't always know that coming in, or they've only learned it once, or it's a brand new dish because our menu is dynamic and changes a lot. They're always forced with cooking new stuff. So another great example is walleye versus halibut. Halibut is typically thicker and walleye is thinner, so it cooks faster. And they have to adjust to those fish. And if it comes out and it's overdone, we're just going to redo it, but let's not do it twice, right? It's like, okay, we can eat that one piece of fish, but let's not do it 6 times. Here's why you need to adjust and how. And I think that I don't know. And then I think it's just the idea is to have a good time, right? Like we're not brain surgeons. Nobody's going to die. We're here bringing people good food and good alcohol and hopefully in a good environment. And let's have fun doing it. If we're having fun, they're going to have fun. I don't want to be miserable at work. And I just want to do my job and have a good time and provide some I really enjoy what I do. I enjoy getting to know people. I enjoy service. I enjoy wowing somebody. I think that that's like some of the things that we do. Like I had a guy ask me one time about the firecracker shrimp and what it was like. And he's first time visitor, had never been in, and he was nervous to try it. He was just like, I don't want to order that because I don't know if I'll like it. And so I had the kitchen pick up 2 pieces of firecracker shrimp for him to try. He's like, "Seriously? Yeah, why not try it? It's not I'm only making a customer. I'm not,
Yeah.
doing anything other than trying to get you to try something new." And blow your mind with good food, and that's kind of I don't know, I think that stuff is easy, but I really like it.
You know what I love and what I'm hearing when it comes to, like, the way that you train and the way that you teach and educate is it sounds to me like whether it's front of the house or back of the house, you're training leaders to take pride in their work, and I feel like it's so infrequent that we see that in so many businesses, and I think that's kind of what makes for, lower morale is there's so many places where you go to work and people tell you this is how you're going to do it, this is what you need to do, and you're going to follow this process every single time, and
Mhm,
you cannot stray from that. And if you stray from that, it's wrong. So you have to just do this, 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 and this. And so in that case, we're training people to just follow the rules and do what they're told and not think for themselves.
mhm,
But when you mentioned the word taking pride or being proud of something that you're serving, that you're the way that you're serving, what you're serving, how you're serving, and I think that that creates more of the mentality for especially, some of these younger kids that you're bringing in, that you're validating their opinion, that
mhm,
what they think and how they feel about it matters. So it gives them that sense of pride and sense of, I think, passion for what they're doing and a sense of ownership too. And
mhm.
it's not just your restaurant, it's their restaurant, and they should take pride in how things are operating. And I remember even hearing, I was really surprised by this because I worked in the restaurant industry for years in the past and front of the house, but everybody kind of had their role and there wasn't as much of an opportunity for like training and education. And I think one of the things that creates a very good culture in any business is everybody having a little bit of experience for the different roles and understanding what goes into that person being able to be successful in their role and that person being able to create something that's innovative and exciting and something that they're passionate about, and everybody has their own roles and responsibilities, but understanding what it's like to be in their shoes can make such a big difference, I think. And
Absolutely.
I remember Liz's daughter coming home one day from working with you, and she was talking about something that she had been able to cook and make. And I thought, wait, I thought she just waited tables, or I thought she just did this, or I didn't know that she was actually learning to cook there too, or experimenting with new dishes. And I thought, that's really neat. She gets to be creative. She gets to have more of a hand in what you guys are doing, but she also knows like this is her role, this is her job, and when she goes in, this is where she can excel, and but she gets to learn other
Other
areas too.
things. Yeah.
And I think that that's so incredible, and you just don't see that very often.
I think honestly that's the biggest lesson we learned from Emerald, which is so I chef and I talk about this all the time. Several things. If someone is struggling to fit in or struggling to learn how we do things, the conversation is, have we done enough to help that person succeed? That's the very first question we ask each other. What have we done to help that person succeed? And and we end up then sometimes with employees who are there for a while who don't work out, but more times we find a way for them to fit in
Mhm.
and succeed, and then they're with us for a long time. The other thing we do is we believe that we should be training our replacements.
Mhm.
I don't need to be there. If I don't need to be there, I don't want to be there, right? I can book parties, I can do my accounting, I don't know, have dinner with my husband. There's a million things
Yeah.
I could be doing. So I'm not afraid of replacing myself. That's my whole goal. It's his goal is to replace himself. And then I think the biggest thing is opportunity and autonomy, those 2 things together. If you that we do a lot of education, we do a lot of, "Let's taste this." We do pre-meal meetings every night where they get to eat several dishes on the menu, new things. We talk about how, where did this cheese come from or where's this wine? And all of those things help them to do a better job for you as the customer, but also for themselves and for me, because the more they know, the more they can share, the more they can educate, the more they can expose you to new things. And then that's a better experience for you. And then you come more, and we all make money from that, right? Like that's how we make a living.
Yeah.
So I think those things are just incredibly important, an opportunity to try something new. Izzy said to Chef, I would love to learn how to do this. He's like, okay, when can you come in? And
Cool. I
there
love.
she is.
Yeah.
We're happy to do that. It's a Kat who's worked for us now for, I think, 4 years. We were having margaritas one night. She said
You have those margaritas. There they are.
She said, I just always wanted to do this like morning donuts, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, well, come in and do it for brunch. Any Sunday that we have brunch, come on, make whatever you want. Here you go. What do you need? And that has segued into Omnoms on
I
Saturday
was just
morning.
gonna say that's number 6.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think, aside from we would love to expand that. So that's something that we just started talking about. And so I'm putting it out in the universe now.
It's really good.
See where that might go.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I love the stories. We preach too. We just have our first 2 employees, but our goal is continually thinking about succession. What will we need next? And when we're doing these initial evaluations with them, we're asking them, what do you love so much that you want to continue doing it? And what would you rather hand off if you wanted to make that decision?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's really unusual. Certainly never happened in my career when I was being corporately evaluated. Thankfully, I got through the evaluations pretty well anyways, but it certainly wasn't from a creative
Yeah.
standpoint. Like,
I
how
think it's really important to find where people are happy. I want to be happy, right? I don't,
The
there's certain
happier
things.
people are, the more successful they're gonna be, and I think I
Yeah.
love your perspective on, training your replacement like you mentioned, and like Liz said with our, we have a small team, but we're growing, but it is so important to find where people are excited to use their skills, and Leah, when you mentioned your first question is, "Have we done enough to help them be successful?" One of the things that Liz and I have talked about at length is making sure that we are putting people in the right roles based on their skills, based on what they enjoy doing, based on their personality styles, because it's not if you have somebody who wants to succeed, but maybe that's just not their area of strength, that's not something that they're natural at or is excited to do,
Mhm.
then it's gonna be harder for them to be successful and be efficient and continue to move to the next level. But if we're doing our part as business owners and leaders and managers to help them find the right position for themselves and then find somebody else to come in and take up, whatever area that they weren't excelling in, then I think you're able to grow that much faster and your morale across the entire team is going to be better and improved along the way because they see that we believe in them and we want them to succeed, and so they're gonna work harder in return too, I
Mhm.
think, and it just
I think so.
kind of that, like, give and take and
Well,
understand.
I think the flip side of that, or maybe the downside, is because that's not the norm in most jobs, employees have a hard time communicating
Yes.
with
They're afraid.
their managers, right? We run into this.
Fear.
We ran into it recently with a difficult situation, but it's like if I ask you, are you okay, or do you have what you want, and you say yes, I can't do anything else, right?
Mhm.
I can't drag it out of you. And some of the things like one of the things that we train the servers on almost instantly is when you've made a mistake, you tell everyone who works here. Tell everyone who works here that you made a mistake because nobody likes to be blindsided by an error, right? But I can't help you fix it if I don't know about it.
Mhm.
And my job is to help you fix that, right? So you got really busy and you forgot to put in table 20's fish. Okay, well, I'm the only one who can go back to that kitchen and say, you give table 8's fish to table 20 because they've been here less time,
Yeah.
start a new one and move things around. But if you try to hide that from me, I can't fix it.
Mhm.
Right? And if you've made a mistake, we want everyone to know so that they can pay attention to no other errors being made to that table.
Mhm.
But that communication is really hard for people to learn. I have one employee took her years to trust me to tell me that she made a mistake. She would always try to hide it and just fluster, and I would stand in front of her and go, "What's going on? You have to tell me what's going on. I can see that something's happened, but you're not sharing that information with me and I have no power with no information."
Mhm.
And that's
Well,
really hard to train people to do.
you're right, there's a lot of fear behind it. Nobody wants to admit that they've made a mistake. We've all been,
Mhm.
I think, raised and trained in a way that, "Oh my gosh, mistakes are so terrible, they're awful, you can't acknowledge it. That shows that there's a weakness, and then your job is at stake." But
Yeah.
I love that mentality behind, like, you have no power to help, the entire team has no power to help, and maybe take things up a notch if there is one mistake that's happened, let's make sure that we're giving extra attention where it needs to fix the situation. And I love that you're encouraging that communication because I think it's then teaching people that mistakes are okay. That's how we learn. It's not going to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Everybody does.
Thing that you can do to like remove that fear and just say, "Hey, here's what happened." Take accountability. Accountability to me, I think personally, accountability is one of the most important things that we can all, I think, offer anybody else to say, "Hey, this is where I think I was wrong. I want to make it right." And then very quickly, I think everybody's willing to step in. Most people are willing to step in and
Mhm.
say, "Wonderful, I appreciate it. Let's figure out how we can fix it together." And
Right.
that just makes
Right.
everybody stronger.
Yeah. The other thing too is we preach a lot about don't lie to the customer. If you don't know the answer, go find the answer. Right? It's okay not to know. You're never gonna know as much as I know. I've already forgotten more than you'll ever learn about certain things. Like, that's okay. We have different experience levels and just don't if you made a mistake, tell the customer you made a mistake if I can't help you fix it. Right? So there's a million ways to do it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that it's just the hardest thing. It's the one that bothers me the most. Like, just tell me. I make lots of mistakes every day I make mistakes.
So, okay, so you deal with your employees very well, very artfully. How do you deal with your husband?
Working together.
Having a different personality perhaps, and, you're grinding, you'd gotta get these out and, how do you deal with the ups and downs together?
We've only ever worked together, right? So we've always worked together. And what's happened when we worked together for Emerald, he was the chef de cuisine and I was under him from the hierarchy standards, right? And now he's under me in the hierarchy standards because I'm the end all be all. But not that I'm not queen of the universe. I just have the final say on what we're gonna do. And you guys have met my husband, he's a character. They I think that we're both just very clear about work is not life. We're both very comfortable in that. We don't tend to bring home to work. We do tend to bring work to home in the sense of we'll have conversations about employees or situations that we're dealing with or what we want to do. We both like that conversation with each other and bouncing things off of each other, trying to problem solve together. So we've always been really good at that. We have really good communication. But I think the easiest way to describe it is just that at work, I'm the boss and then him and then everybody else, right? So it's just the way somebody has to make the final decision. Somebody has to do those things. And I love him. I love him to death and he's incredibly creative, but he hates the minutia of life. So if it's a call the plumber or try to snake the drain, I'm the one who makes that decision, right? Like he doesn't want to make that decision. He wants to cook food and create good menus. And so I deal with which is why he's good at the front of the house stuff. I mean the front facing stuff. I'm always just like, I'll make a phone call.
Yeah.
I'll tell him, but I don't wanna do it, you know what I mean? So, I think that's the easiest way. There have been times for sure when a little bit of personal has gotten into work where I remember slamming the door real hard at the bistro once at him, and it wasn't him chef, it was him my husband, and I was, mad, and at that time, I came back and apologized to all the people who were working because 'cause I'm like, "That was inappropriate, and it's not for me to do that with him and you here, and I apologize." And that's hasn't happened often, but and it hasn't happened in years, but at the beginning, there's a lot of stress in the beginning, so you have no money, and so you're just trying to hang it on and you're both there working your butts off and you have no money and you're like, "Oh, we gotta feed the children." And so you're, trying to get all that together. But I think since that has calmed down, it's been pretty easy.
Well, and it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, transitioning over to how you raised your kids, it seems like you both were really good with boundaries. Like you made these rules and you really stuck to them.
We did. We're certainly we have gotten better every year, right? So in the beginning, it's hard to say no to things because you need the money. And you just are like, "Oh, okay, how can we make this work?" And my sisters and my mother were just incredible support for us in the beginning. and helping out and taking the kids so that we could both work the weekends because that was the busiest time. So both of us needing to be there. So I think that the bedtime thing we never ever strayed from. Like federal holidays, not all of them, but we never work Mother's Day. We never work Father's Day. We never work Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. We never work Thanksgiving Day. We never work New Year's Day. And I work Valentine's Day
That's
because
incredible with the restaurant business, just because
yeah,
those are such busy days, most of them. So
yeah.
that's
We don't
incredible.
work Easter, but we don't work 4th of July. But those are the things, our employees also want off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just us, they also want off. Is they wanna be at home on Christmas Eve and not at the restaurant. But also I definitely got some flack for that in the beginning from customers, like, they'd call up, "Are you open for Mother's Day?" I'm like, "No, we're not." "What do you mean you're not open for Mother's Day?" I'm like, "Well, I'm a mother, I wanna be at home with my children." So, that's I'm sorry that you want to eat here, but I won't be here. Thank you. And people, we got some pushback for sure because it was different in how people did things, but
Yeah.
I don't think there's any reason to work those days. It's like we all deserve time off. And the other thing is we've always made it like even when the kids were little and we were poor, we took off spring break. The kids were the not the first year, but by the second year, we
Mhm.
took off spring break and then we would take off 3 or 4 days in the summer. And then that's expanded as we've gotten
Mhm.
more staff and more trained and more settled and more secure. So, but you have to make those priorities. I never missed a swim meet or basketball game. My husband made as many as he could. Like there were days in the last for high school, he made all of them, but prior to high school, he couldn't make all of them. But he came to as many as we could. And but one of I was always there. So that's David was huge for us. He worked for us for 10 years. He's a great guy. We still have a good relationship, but he was there when I was home with my kids. And when he came to us and said, "I'm leaving because I want to be home with my kids," I was like, "Well, you know,
We get it, but no, no.
we get it, but no, you can't be mad at that. You
Yeah.
can't be mad at that. Go of course you wanna spend time with your kids. They're at an age now where they're fun. Go, because that doesn't last forever. And so it was perfect timing because my kids had gotten to a point where we weren't doing that stuff anymore. Sophie was in high school and Ella could drive, and so I had so much more freedom to work, and it worked out really, really well. But yeah, I think you just have to decide that that's what are your boundaries and
Yeah.
don't stray from that.
Compromise them. Yeah.
So I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to let you answer it anyways, because we're big into what
Thinking the
really
same
is.
thing, Liz.
I know.
I know where you're going.
We're big into being disruptors, disrupting our industry. How do you view yourself as a disruptor? What are some of the peaks, what history things that have happened to you that really put you in that category of being a disruptor?
Oh, that's tough. I don't now I'm dead curious to see what your answer would be to that before since you said you think you know what it would be. I think that I don't like to ever toot my own horn. I think we changed the dining landscape of central Wisconsin. And and I'm very proud of that. But we also believe in very much in that if one portion of or one restaurant in our community, because that's my business, is elevating the standards, then everyone else can elevate theirs, right? And so the banker who said to me, "You can't have a restaurant in this town without a fish fry and a salad," was like, Jesus, yes, we can. I swear to God, we can. And we did that anyway, and we did it in the Great Recession, and we were so well received by this community. I can't express that enough. But I think that we were the right people at the right time. I wanted to raise my kids here with my family, and it just worked out for us. And so we're very grateful for that. But I think we did absolutely change the dining landscape of central Wisconsin. And
Yeah.
we're proud of that.
That's very cool.
Oh, I definitely that comment that you made early on talking to the banker and
Mhm.
the fish fry thing, it was like we did not believe it when, you know, person who actually worked for Emerald is coming to Plover, what
Yeah.
is going on? Like, our
Yeah.
whole industry is being shaken.
Yeah, it was funny because when we were first here in town, my mom had the kids one night, we went out to a local bar and had a burger and a couple beers, and we're listening to people talk about us who don't know who we are, right, in the bar about the restaurant opening, and they're like, "They're gonna have $40 entrees for a lunch." And I'm like, "Who has $40 entrees for lunch? We're not that fancy. It's just food." It's like we're not that none of that's happening.
That's great. I love that. I would say just from what I know and what I've heard, I love your comment changing the dining landscape. I think that's incredible, and I agree. I think that you absolutely have because of the way that you do things, because of your atmosphere when you walk in, because of the way that you serve. Like early on when you were talking about the small plates and being able to share, and your husband walking in and ordering everything on the menu, my husband and I are kind of foodies too, but I am that person where I'm like, "Oh, you ordered that? Can I try a bite of that? That looks so
Uh-huh.
good. I still want mine, but I wanna try a bite
Mhm.
of that. I wanna try a bite of that." And
Yeah.
I love being able to experience more that way without having to order every huge
Everything on the menu.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that, but I also love that Liz and I talk a lot about finding balance and finding that, like, making sure that you are focusing on the priorities in life that you need to. That's really the primary concept and mission and vision behind Wealthy Empowerment Network when we created it was it's not to say that there are not going to be chaotic busy times in the business and we're all going to run around feeling like chickens with our heads cut off sometimes, but when there is something that needs to be focused on, if it's family, if it's personal, if it's your health, if it's financial, that's where you need to direct your attention and focus. And it sounds like you and your husband have done such a great job of not only saying that that's your principle and you are not compromising. People call and say, "What? You're not open on." I mean, in the restaurant industry, that is shocking to hear. For most people are like, "Well, mom's not going to cook on Mother's Day, so we're going to have to go out to a restaurant." So it is different. It's definitely disrupting, but it's also you're leading and you're sharing and you're teaching others that it's okay for you guys to put your family first, put your time, your personal time first, and the business can still be incredibly successful and people are still going to come and they're going to love it and they're going to appreciate everything that you're creating and you're being incredibly innovative with what you're doing. So I think that that's just a beautiful thing to share and to live your life that way. You're leading with that intention and I think that's wonderful.
Mm, thanks.
Thanks for doing it.
Yes, honestly. And so are there other restaurant ideas still in the works that you're not sharing, which is
I
fine, but I
I
wanna know that
always
you're not done.
I
Mhm.
always have something brewing,
Okay,
and
good.
I honestly, I think, we're 55 this year. I just turned 55 2 days ago, and
Dang.
thank
Birthday.
you. Gosh. So it's like we can see the light at the end of that tunnel,
Mhm.
and we talk about it a lot, and what does that mean? And, I again, I'll say it 100 times every day, I would open a restaurant every year if I had the money. And I just don't. I also don't have the energy anymore. But, I think for the first time in our lives, we're debt free. So I'm like looking at a restaurant loan again I would be like, oh my God, no.
And you made it through COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, which was not easy, but we were lucky. So I think that there's always ideas. And man, I would my in my second life, I would love to be part of a company that consults and helps restaurants open and conceptualize their things. My problem is that I am always honest. And so if I think your idea is stupid, I usually say it. Not exactly a good way to make a living if you're a consultant. So I don't know, we'll see. But Christian and I talk about retirement all the time and how that would look, and it's funny because we look at it and we're like, "Well, maybe in retirement, instead of the 70 plus hours we work a week, we'll work 30." And we can't ever imagine not doing this at this time. But, things change. The world is a very chaotic place right now, so you never know what's gonna happen, but I do have a couple of things that I would love to do, but we'll see if it ever comes to fruition.
Yes. Well, let me tell you, Leah, you did not disappoint. So, this has been incredibly interesting as always. And I just, again, so grateful that you and Chef decided to come back and make your home here in central Wisconsin, as I know so many people are as well. But I think you've offered up some really brilliant advice to not only other restaurants, which some in the area should pay attention to, But also just in general in life and, how you teach, by communication. Raising my kids, I always said, you can get away with a lot, but the second you stop communicating, we're going to have a problem. And I know, there something's up when I'm not getting the whole story.
Yeah.
So, whether it's an employee or whether it's a kid,
Mhm.
and as a working mom too, that's another layer of, coaching
Yeah.
and consulting and
Yeah.
these
Yep.
other things that we're trying
Yeah,
to
how many times do I have to get through 6th grade? Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, it's like asking AI now, Teach me this like I'm a third grader."
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Best thing ever.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah.
We're just incredibly grateful and just honestly grateful and so happy to be here, but just you couldn't have asked for a better reception from a community, and we've been so well supported by people and buying into what we do and giving us a chance to do things differently and giving us a chance to kind of think outside the Central Wisconsin Supper Club box, which are great, but we don't need any more of them, So it's been a really fun ride that feels like about 20 minutes, and it's been almost 20 years.
So what advice, there's still foodies out there and, possibly even my daughter who might even be considering some sort of career down in the culinary area. What advice would you give? I mean, you clearly had that passion in the food area forever,
I don't
but what
I
do
don't
you
know that I don't know that I had it in the way that Izzy is interested in it. It was a means to an end for me at the beginning, right? And I came up in this and I came up here, right? So I came up with Gitter and I worked at the Moose Lodge when I was 14 and there were no men in the industry here when I was a kid, when I was working, right? There were a couple of cooks, but all servers were women. All of them were women. And so it just at the time, maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I remember. And so when I landed in Vegas and started working for Emerald, I saw a whole new way to do restaurants
Mhm.
comparatively to what I had been doing. And I saw this passion in food and service and wine. And, I was taught as a kid that that is a job that you do before you get your real job. And that is not how they look at it. That's how, when I got hired with Emerald, that's a career. You do that until you retire. And whether you serve or you're a manager or you make that transition to management doesn't really matter. This is the career and it's the education and the sommeliers and sous chefs and garde and all these things that I had no idea existed before I got there. So I don't know that I was born into it that way. I think that there's a level of respect that I gained for the profession through Emerald that I didn't have prior to that. And this is going to sound really bad. I like to be in control. So when we decided to open our own business, that if you had told me at 18 that I would own a business and that had been open for 20 or you've been in business for 20 years, I would have looked at you and laughed and said, there's no way. I'm not disciplined enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not any of those things. And it turns out I am. The one of the things I learned very early on was to ask questions because you don't know everything. I remember Jim Tucksher, who was an attorney in Rapids, was having dinner at the food bar at the bistro, and lovely man, lovely wife, and they were good. Yeah, they were so great. They were good customers, good friends with Bill Fields, and we're sitting down talking, and I think we maybe had been maybe 8 or 9 months in the restaurant, and he said, "So how are things going?" And I'm like, "Well, they're going." And it was probably right around the time that we ran out of our working capital left over from the loans, right? And I'm like, "Well, it's going." And he's like, "Well, what's happening?" I'm like, "Well, we talked about it a little bit." He's like, "You need to talk to Bill." And I'm like, "No, I don't. Why would I talk to Bill? Why would I? My banker wants to think everything is going great." And his advice to me was never talk money with your husband, with Jeff, because he will change what he's doing to help you. Always dump your financial stress on your banker. Always let them know what's going on. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They want everything to be great. He said, no, they want to know what's going on. So they can't, again, to me, it's that same lesson of you can't help someone if you don't know the truth of what's happening. Right. And so there were a couple of times that first year where I absolutely stopped talking to Christian about money. Never talked to, I still haven't to this day. We do not talk about how much money the restaurant has or made or is profitable. We do not talk about it. We talk about it in categories of labor, linen, food, liquor, but not at a bottom line because he will adjust those things. And as long as I don't want him to buy, his point was he'll buy less of the good product, right? He'll change what he purchases to make more money. Like, that's a good point. I don't want to do that.
Sounds like you want to keep him being creative and being the visionary.
Yes, because that's the driving force, right? And I mean, I do a lot. I don't discount what I do, but his food is why we're here, right? And so I think that there were times when I learned that lesson. I had listened to it once and I was like, damn, that's good advice. I'm going to take that. Stopped talking to Christian about it completely. Went in to see Bill the next day and I'm like, we don't have any money. And it's like, you're not supposed to have any money. And so, there were a couple of times where I'd call him up and I'd be like, okay, so I have this amount coming out on Monday, but nothing's coming in until Tuesday. And so I need you to bridge that gap. He's like, okay, no overdraft charges, like we'll work with you on that and make sure that we always, because the minute you don't pay a liquor bill in the restaurant business, they stop bringing you liquor. You have to pay cash on delivery. And so you have to be really careful with some of those things and make in every business you do. But if you own a bar, you got to have booze and you can't buy it from anybody but a distributor. And if you don't pay your bill or you bounce a check, you no longer have credit. So he made sure that we never did that. Right. But I would not have known to talk to him without Bill or without Jim. So I think there's advice. Wait, where do we start, Liz? Sorry. I always lose my
I
track of
think
thought.
you gave a ton of
I think
advice.
that was a lot of
That was awesome.
I think it does go back to, though, like you said, people cannot step in to help you if you
Mhm,
don't communicate, and it's okay sometimes to share a vulnerability
mhm.
because it can be turned into a strength if you are surrounding yourself with the right people and they understand and they see the vision because the way that you've been able to share it, they wanna see you succeed too, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I think when all those restaurants that I opened was never my money, right? So there were a lot of things that I knew how to do, but I didn't have to worry about whether or not I could actually cover payroll. That was not my problem.
Right, right. So, okay, total side note. Have you watched the show The Bear?
Of course.
Okay. So how close to truth is that?
So in my opinion, the best bear episode is the one where his cousin goes to what's supposed to be Grand Atches's place or Trotter's place, right? He goes to the fine dining restaurant and the
Yeah.
woman is there in the kitchen expoing. That is the most realistic depiction of actual restaurant work I've ever seen in my life. And when I watched it, I was like, "Oh, I miss that. I miss that." Like, I think that one of the things that has been good and bad about being in business as long as we have is that we have changed
Mm.
in the best way possible. You have to change. If you don't change, if you don't adapt, you don't grow. If you don't grow, you die, right? But I love that pomp and circumstance of fine dining. I love gang service. I love putting a napkin on a lap. I love pouring wine and having 4 tables over 6 tables, right? And Father Fats is really, as much as I love it, is the furthest from what I love service-wise that we've ever done. And but the world has moved on from that, right? There's a very low number of people who want that experience anymore or can afford it, to be quite honest. I mean, having 7 cooks with tweezers is the most expensive thing. Holy cow, right? Like,
Yeah.
come on. I mean, you have to charge $500 a person without wine to get tweezers with 7 cooks making 1 plate, right? But it's cool.
Right.
And I wanna go there, but I think that and things are cycles, right? Everything's a cycle.
Yeah.
And I think you have to eventually I've had to find a way to let some of that stuff go and not adjust my standards, but adjust to the demand of what people want. And and then adjust not change the standards, but adjust them to meet that. Does that make sense? It's it's like just little things that make no difference at all to most people bother me tremendously. And I have to learn a way to I have to learn to find a way to make that better for me so I'm not annoyed when they're doing it, but also so that the customer still gets the service that they want. So that's a hard thing, but change is good. So I love that episode of The Bear. I think it's great. Yeah, it's a good one. Top Chef too, I think is very similar to what like those cooks are cooks I came up with, right? Or chef came up with. It's an interesting the way they do it is very interesting and accurate, I think. Compared for the cooking shows
Nice.
comparatively. Yeah.
Good to know. Well, thank you so much for everything that you've shared today. Thank you for joining us today. I think there's so much great advice and so many great lessons in everything that we've talked about today. I'm sure everybody who listens today is going to take some tidbit away with them that hopefully they can put into practice, helps them a little bit or creates a little bit of clarity for them. We encourage anybody we can to come out and try your restaurants, try the food, experience the culture, experience the service. I think it's absolutely worthwhile. So we'll share all that as well in this episode. Thank you everybody for joining us here today. And we are going to keep more episodes coming for you and new guests and new topics. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time. All right. All right. Bye. Investment advisory services are offered through Wealthy Empowerment Network, an investment advisor in the states of Illinois, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Ohio. Kona Financial Planning and Infinity Wealth Company, LLC are doing business as or DBA names of Wealthy Empowerment Network, LLC. The views and opinions expressed in the podcast are for informational and educational purposes only. Nothing should be construed as personalized advice or recommendation of any kind. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decisions. All expressions of opinion are subject to change without notice, and there is no guarantee that any claims made will come to pass. We do not guarantee the accuracy of the information provided. There is no assurance that any investment, plan, or strategy will be successful. Investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. Wealthy Empowerment Network is not affiliated with the guest featured in the podcast and does not endorse or recommend any services they provide.